your grasp to pick up a leaf or a small insect on the ground. To your surprise, you run over to her just in time before she takes the pleasure of what she's found toward her mouth. But as soon as one thing is taken from her, she has managed to find something else that sparks her desire even more than the first. We find babies like her to be adorable and innocent. Innocent, by American Heritage Dictionary, is defined as not experienced or worldly, naive and unaware. Babies can't help what they do because they have not been exposed to the maliciousness of the world yet. When little ones do things that would otherwise be out of the norm for us as adults, like knock something over or even hit someone, we as parents lovingly run towards them, smile, and say, "Oh, it's okay, she didn't know any better." Why? Because as babies, they explore the world around them to see how to test limits and boundaries. All the while toothless, they laugh and snicker because they've learned something new. Young ladies, every day you are learning something new. Whether it's in the classroom or out in the world, you are constantly dissecting the knowledge that's given to you, resulting in many times having to make some pretty hefty decisions. See, we as parents sometimes don't know the difficulties and stress that these young ladies have each day. We might laugh and think, what difficulties could they possibly have? We work every day. We go to a job on a 9 to 5. We have to pay the bills. What could they possibly have difficulties for? But I'm an educator of 12 years, and I must tell you, peer pressure can be a serious thing. The pressure to succeed, the pressure of which friends to choose, how to dress, and to have all the latest stuff to be cool. And unfortunately, sometimes the pressure to not try new things, which for many are the wrong things. But what about just being? Have you ever stopped to think about what just being will do for you? What decisions should we make to not only make us feel good inside, but also be mindful of what our parents taught us from little girls, to be independent, to make wise choices, and succeed at being our own authentic selves? Why don't you realize, what you don't realize is that many of the experiences that you have faced, you maybe didn't have to. It could have been avoided had you just been true to who you really are. My grandmother used to always say to me, keep living. Keep living. You have so many experiences left to face. It's what you do with those experiences, though, that will frame your character for years to come. In my 34 years of living, I can say I have faced a lot. From a little baby, again, I was always considered damaged goods. As soon as I came into this world, I was already labeled as an outsider, someone that wouldn't make it and was hanging on for dear life by a thread with a case of tuberculosis. Doctors sent me away to die after being found half-fed, malnourished, and needing love and support that my mother and father just couldn't give. So I was adopted at 2 months of age by my grandparents after I was delivered from a bad domestic dispute from my mother and father. Right away, I didn't have both of my parents to raise me and bring me up in the right way, or what I thought should be the right way. Throughout my life, I always tried to vie for the attention of my mother. When all the while, every time she looked at me, she saw my father, and she resented everything that he stood for, which included me. I'll stop for a second. My mother and I, for as long as I can remember, envied each other. We did not have a great relationship growing up. I was with my grandparents, and thank God for my grandmother, because my grandmother helped me to understand common sense and future motherhood. She raised me. She was an old school grandmother. Couldn't stand out on the street corner. Couldn't sell myself. I had to go to school. I had to take up something that I would be passionate about and use that to the glory of God. I stayed in the church, sung in the church. And she raised me up with a sense of class, a sense of style. She didn't have much, but what she had, she gave. And she loved me the more for that. And she raised me up at a time when my mother could not. And for that, I'm grateful. I had to come to grips with my mother and father not raising me. Yes, it was hard, but it became easier with each passing day. I gave my life over to the Lord at a very early age. So it was then, with the help of the Lord and the encouragement of my grandparents, that I started to look at what gifts and talents I had that I could continue to develop and become passionate about. One thing I noticed as the mothers and the daughters came up and the mothers honored them, most of the time those mothers said this one thing. They wanted you, young ladies, daughters, to keep Christ first in your life. If you have Christ, you have everything. You will never lack anything. You will always have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to make wise decisions. They want the best for you. So remember that when it comes to doing certain things or the pure pressures of life. Remember God and remember this moment with your mothers. When you're out in college and you're away from home, think of this moment. Think of what they are honoring you for. Think about the things that they've shared that they want for you and the hope that they have for you. That will help you to succeed and excel in life. Dr. Mike Murdoch said it best when he said, "What you love is a clue to the gifts, skills, and wisdom you contain. It becomes your assignment." Many of you have dreams, you have aspirations, you have shared with us in the program what your hope to succeed is for. When I came to realize what I was good in, it sparked a curiosity for learning all that I could about that gift and nurturing it to become what I would eventually do in my life today. I remember in church, I got involved into the ministry by singing in my church choir. When the pastor realized that I had a voice in which to sing, he would request that I sang solos on some Sundays. I took pride in singing and would remember as I sung, many members in the congregation would rise and sing along with me. They were moved and it blessed others. So I made sure that I followed what my grandmother always said to me, "Lily, anytime someone asks you to sing, you do so. If you don't use it, the Lord will take it away." How many of you heard of that? You use your gifts and callings, and one day you don't want to do it, somebody asks you to do it, I don't feel like it. But your grandmothers and your mothers always tell you, you don't use it, you'll lose it. Well, I didn't want that to happen, of course. So I did everything that I had to do to take that gift to the next level. I remember in high school getting involved into the chorus there and wanting to audition for the show choir and the ensembles. And I remember being the only black girl there to audition. And I auditioned, but I walked away knowing that I had it. And I also remember I always wanted to be an educator. From the 4th grade, I remember my teacher, Miss Cook, African-American black teacher, and she was very hard-nosed. Back in those days, there's a lot of respect you had for your teachers. And she, even though she was strict, she made learning fun. And that was the day in which I realized that I wanted to be an educator. She never tolerated excuses and had high expectations for each and every one of us. She would allow me to do things for her and be somewhat of a teacher's pet, and I didn't mind doing it. She also helped me to realize my love for writing and writing short stories. So I began to write about any and everything that interested me. From that point on until well into high school, I would enter various writing competitions on Black history and politics that earned me quite a bit of money in the process. When I finally got to college, with various trials and struggles in college, I ran across some very, very terrible situations, and I will admit, I left what my grandmother told me. You get into school and you see things. I'm grown now. I can make my own decisions. And I left what my grandmother had instilled in me. In the process of doing that, I was raped. My innocence was taken away. I'm so glad that I'm here today, because I want you young ladies to understand that you have more power than you think you have. You have the power to say yes. You have the power to say no. You have the power to stand and proclaim what it is that God has given to you. Don't make the same mistake. Cherish your mothers that are sitting next to you. Cherish your family members that give you wise counsel. You may not always want it, but they're telling you for your own good because they've been there. Or even if they haven't been there, just by listening so you don't have to experience what some others have experienced. It goes a long way. I remember before my passing of my grandmother in 1999, we sat down together and made a promise. She really wanted me to go and get my master's degree. My grandmother, for as long as I can remember, had worked as a domestic engineer, otherwise known as a housekeeper. She wanted more from me and didn't want me to follow in her nor my mother's footsteps, who was also in the business of housekeeping. So we made a pact that I would continue my education. I wanted it badly for myself, but I also had it in my heart to finish my master's degree for her. And I will say I'm the only one in my family that had gone to college and have 3 advanced degrees to prove it, all because of my grandmother. She always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. So she would go around and make sure everybody knew that I was going to be one. I believe she was very proud of me, not necessarily for the person that I was, but for the person she knew I would become. By the time my grandmother passed away in 1999, I was 2 weeks away from graduating with my master's degree. Throughout all of this time, I did think about my mother and wondered if our relationship would ever begin. And it wasn't until well after I was grown and through college, working as an educator, before our relationship would bloom into what it is today. But tragedy had to strike, though, before it would come to fruition. My mother had another child, my younger brother, after my grandparents adopted me. He emulated everything she had ever done. He was considered a man before he was even a teenager. Unfortunately, his life wasn't what others wanted it to be. Watching others through his life do negative things caused his life to also spiral out of control. His life ended with a gunshot after running a life of crime and hustling for what he thought was the way life was supposed to be. He died at the age of 29. He left behind 6 children, all under the age of 6. Many people thought that his murder was senseless, but I believe God allows things to occur in our lives to bring about a change in others. It did that and so much more for my mother. I witnessed when my mother gave her life over to Christ after years of drug addiction, prostitution. I remember the day that she was baptized in an old apostolic church with an old silver tub. And when she went down, she totally changed. Now my mom is saved and Holy Spirit filled. She left all of the negativity behind and now gives herself willingly. Her time, her talents, and her resources, all for the glory of God. And for that, I'm grateful. So that's why I say, young ladies, cherish your mothers. So again, I ask you today, young ladies, what change are you going to make today? What resources do you have to give to others? What gifts and talents can you offer to your family, friends, teachers, your church, and your community that will have a positive impact for future generations? Discern your gifts and callings. Build your daily agenda around those things every day. Whatever you are gifted to do is what you should be doing. Make today a day that you walk in your calling. Make today your day that you walk in your calling. More than ever, today we have hope for our futures in ways we never thought would be possible. To see ourselves, our country, with a black president of the United States. That should make each and every one of us proud. There are no more excuses for what we can do. We all should be able to lift our heads a little higher and stand a little straighter, knowing that we will make better strides, and anything our hands touch will be blessed. Young ladies, let your voice be heard, and let your light so shine towards others. Do not move away from the essence of what God made you. Understand the importance of your uniqueness. And when someone comes to you and asks, why are you so happy? Or why are you always smiling? Let them know, because my hopes, dreams, and future are ever present before me. The Lord determines your destiny. You must seek it, find it, and walk in it. What are you going to do today? Change and hope? Yes, we will. Thank you. Give Lily another hand. It takes a lot of courage to talk about things that have been painful to you, things that have taken you time to deal with and overcome. And so I really applaud you, because so often things are not said, and a lot of people are in that situation or have been. And so I know that you've touched some people today. You've helped them. I think you've strengthened some relationships and will bring about a greater appreciation for mothers and daughters. So thank you. We're going to change the order a little bit. We have come to the end of our program, but I would ask Ms. Fran, would you please come up and acknowledge our donors, our supporters. And while you do that, I'm going to try to get this other CD to work.